Okay, now we're going to talk about microcurrent. Is it on?
It'll be in 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3, go.
We'll talk about microcurrent. This is the microcurrent device. But I'm not going to talk so much now about using the machine. I'm going to go over a little bit about the history of microcurrent and why we're using it in the practice and kind of like my evolution of using it. So when I was a busy eye surgeon, I began to become frustrated in the treatment of patients with macular degeneration. When I graduated from my residency, we were starting to use the laser, but I felt that the laser treatment really didn't work. And the way the laser worked, you find an area that was bleeding, and you kind of blasted that area and destroyed the blood vessel and stopped the bleeding. But as you blast that area, you also destroy the retina, and they got a blind spot. So it really wasn't a cure. It was just a way of, treating the hemorrhage. And of course, I didn't know anything about homeopathy, and now I would say, well, my goodness, you want to find out why it's bleeding, what's the underlying cause. You just don't want to treat that sick blood vessel. So I read an article that came out, Sam Snead. Since I was a big golfer and I love Sam Snead, he was cured of macular degeneration by something called microcurrent. And I got a copy of the article. I called up the company that manufactured the device and I said, send me 10 of them. I want to see if it works. So I called up 10 of my patients and who had macular degeneration, not doing well. I said, there's a new treatment. I don't know if it's going to work. If you want to come into the office, we'll treat you and we'll see if it has any effect. But being an ethical physician, I wanted to treat myself first. This was kind of scary. So I had the microcurrent device. I remember sitting at the desk and putting it on my eyes and saying a prayer like, dear God, I can read the front page of the paper, eye surgeon blinded by microcurrent device. So I hooked it up, and I ran it, and then I took it off, and oh, thank God I can still see. And my vision was a little bit better. So then I had these 10 people come in, and with the medical legal situation, I had them sign like a 30-page document. They wouldn't sue me. And so, because the FDA stated at that time, you can't use microcurrent on the eye. And the FDA is a smart organization, right? So I treated the 10, and lo and behold, 7 out of 10 had a significant improvement of vision. And I says, my goodness, this works. So I began treating patients. Now, at that time, we had a really crude device. All we had was 4 frequencies. And not only did we have a crude device, we used acupuncture points on the eye. So you had 4 points below and 4 points above. So we'd get these elderly people, and they had poor vision to begin with, and they had to figure out 4 points. And we ran one frequency for 5 seconds, and we changed it another. So not only did they have to do 4 points, but there were 4. So it was kind of complicated. People did well, but the compliance was poor. You take somebody elderly that maybe has Parkinson's disease, and you have to ask them, people were poking their eyes. And it worked, but it was difficult. So then I did some research, and there was something called frequency specific, that you can get better results if you match the frequency of the current with the tissue. So I was excited about this, and I bought these very expensive microcurrent generators. It was like $20,000. You could dial in different frequencies and run it, and they used different delivery devices. And patients were getting much better results. But they couldn't take that big machine home, although some patients did invest $16,000, $20,000 in a big machine like that and treat themselves. But it was tedious because you had to turn the knobs, and maybe for every person there was like 30 different frequency pairs. That means you had to turn the knob, one knob to this number, run it for a minute, and when you're done, change it again. So I said, there has to be a way that you could like program the frequencies into a computer, and the computer would run the frequencies in a sequence, so make it easier. So I consulted 3 different engineering firms. I was in Phoenix at the time, and the electrical engineers came in. I told them about my project, and they wanted between $30,000 and $50,000 as a retainer to develop the device. But they told me that the technology wasn't there, and if they could develop it, it probably wouldn't be approved by the FDA for manufacturing. So I was very, very discouraged. But then I had an idea. Let me sign up for a master's program in electrical engineering. So I applied to Arizona State and had my interview with the department chairman, and he was kind of perplexed. Why is a medical doctor? And I told him about my ideas. He says, well, whatever, you're accepted. So I started taking classes. And in a way, it might have been a mistake. I have a lot more respect for electrical engineers. I mean, this stuff was so far over my head. My first class was advanced digital circuitry. And I mean, it was fascinating, but one of the reasons I went was just to hang out with the geeks. And I met a guy there by the name of Ning Wu, and I call him Ning Wow now, not Ning Wu, Ning Wow. Ning Wu is a 3rd-generation electrical engineer. His father was professor of electrical engineering at Beijing University. So Ning was doing, electrical engineering and circuits when he was a kid. So I met Ning, and I told him about my project, and he was really excited. He says, you mean that, microcurrent can reverse eye diseases? And we would hang out. He would come to the office, and he would be treating me and looking at the machines. And so we formed a partnership to develop a microcurrent machine, and this is what came out of it. So Ning developed this machine in 6 months using engineering talent from China and Canada. He has some relatives that live in Canada writing the software. So this was the first programmable microcurrent machine to be developed in the world. By programmable, you can write frequency pairs in and erase them and rewrite them. So then at last, we can have a device that can be customized for each patient. So this machine has a lot more versatility than that $20,000 machine with all the knobs. So much like the iPhone now. The iPhone now has as much computing power as an entire computer building in the 1960s. So the technology has changed. Now the story gets interesting because I have been trying to get this machine approved by the FDA for the treatment of eye problems. And I can remember going to Washington, D.C., meeting with the FDA in a room, 30 government bureaucrats, and me sitting there telling them about presenting my initial experience, how it can help a chronic disease. And they told me that I have to submit an animal study before I can begin any human studies. And I said, what animal would you like me to use? And they said, well, that's up to you to do the research and present that to us. And I'm not a big university. I don't have, the time or the resources to do that. So at one time, I did want to do a study, a controlled study. And I had talked to Ning. I said, Ning, let's make a sham machine. So one machine looked like a perfect machine. All the lights came on, but no current was delivered. The other machine delivered a current. So I had patients come in and signed up for the study. I did not know if the machine was real. They did not know, and the statistician. So we began doing microcurrent, recording vision, the way a good study was done. It's called a controlled study. And I got a letter from the FDA, cease and desist, stop the study. I said, why? They said, because the machine isn't approved for treating the eye. Well, how am I going to get evidence? So this is the bureaucracy that occurs. But recently I was excited. A big investor from California contacted me, Howard Leonhardt. He has taken microcurrent devices to the market already. He has developed a microcurrent machine. He's an electrical engineer and a financier. He has taken a microcurrent device to treat heart tissue after heart attacks. Because one of the problems after a heart attack, you have heart irritability, which leads to irregular beating and death. And his machine has been shown to reduce the irritability and help regenerate heart tissue. And it's commercially on the market now. The company's called MyoStim, and it's sold for $20,000 for a machine. So he wanted me to be on the board because he's using my eye frequencies, and he's going to be taking a machine to market, and it's under investigation. The company is called iCell, E-Y-E Cell, C-E-L-L. And he's also has proprietary frequencies in which microcurrent has been shown to be a stem cell signaling device, not only to stimulate stem cells, but to guide the stem cells to go to the right tissue. Because one of the biggest problems is you get stem cells, and they may go to the wrong place. I had a patient that spent $25,000 on stem cell, and all it did was get rid of his lung infection. It didn't help his eye. So you may take stem cells, and it may go to your sinuses or lung or knee. Nothing happens to your eye. So when we do stem cells here, we want to make sure you don't have any active infection or inflammation going on. And we're using these signals to try to direct it right to the eye. So after you get stem cells, not only do we inject the stem cells near your eye, under the eye, we use microcurrent to deliver them. So it's kind of exciting, but unfortunately, once the machine's approved by the FDA, it's going to be very expensive. It's probably going to be $15,000 to $20,000 for a machine, because it's millions of dollars to get it approved, millions of dollars. I mean, he has a research team at the university. Another funny story about microcurrent, I got a call from the University of Rome, Professor Matteo Russo, an electrical physiologist, Department of Physiology. He wanted me to collaborate with him on a project looking at the effect of microcurrent on retinal tissue. He had a theory that it opened up ionic channels in the nucleus. And the nucleus is kind of the brain of the cell. It begins replication of protein that just changes the whole cell. So I was excited. My wife and I lived in Rome for 3 months working with Professor Russo. But I quickly found out that the Italians, they like to have meetings, they like to have dinners, but nothing gets done. So when there was a problem with the Italian government, they would not permit his research lab. I guess the animal activists there, he didn't get a permission to use the animals to treat the retinal tissue. So I kind of circumvented that. There's a company in Maine that has a genetic strain of rats that have macular degeneration. So I talked to Professor Russo. We were on the ranch. I said, let me buy 100 of these rats. I'll treat them. I'll send you the eyeballs, and you do the research. But he said, no hurry. We'll get it done. We'll get it done. That was about a year ago. So I'm going to finish with this story. I had the pleasure of finally treating Sam Snead. His family doctor contacted me, and Sam was having a decrease in vision. So I went to his home in Florida. I treated him for a week, and he gave me golf lessons. You want to know what he told me about my golf game? First of all, Sam was probably one of the greatest golfers, I think, that ever existed. He had a hole-in-one with every club in his bag except his putter. And there are many professional golfers who never get a hole-in-one with every club in his bag. And I said, Sam, when did you get a hole-in-one with your driver? He said, well, it was Pebble Beach on number 17. He said, most of the boys couldn't even make the green because the wind was in our face. He said, I knew I hit a good shot when I saw all the hats fly up around the green. And Sam, the thing that really bothered him was losing the Open. That was the only majors he never won. And he remembers every shot. You know, I was at the bar with him. And he replayed his entire round with me. You know, his tee shot on number 1, he knew exactly where the ball went. The second shot, golfers are like that. They remember every shot. So anyway, Sam took me down to the driving range and had me hit a bucket of balls and put another bucket down, hit another bucket. He's looking at different angles. Came up to me, put his arm around me. He said, Dr. Kondrot, here's what I want you to do. I want you to cut back for a year, then just give it up. So I listened to Sam. I haven't played golf in 15 years. And I'm a happier person. What did Mark Twain say? Golf is a good walk spoiled, a nice walk spoiled.